Bonjour. Today we're going to be learning about another past tense called the imparfait, which we would call in English the imperfect. So we've already learned the passé composé. That's the first past tense that we've learned. This is another one. So let's get started. First, you need to know how to make a verb, form a verb in the imparfait. So you need a stem. You're going to take the new form from your present tense verb, drop the ONS ending, and then once you know what your subject of your sentence is, you're going to add the appropriate imparfait ending onto the end of that verb. So the endings are AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, and AIENT. So let's take a look at an example. We have the verb aimer here. I'm showing you what it looks like in the imparfait. So aimer, you know, would be nous aimons, we like or we love. You would drop the ONS so you get your stem, AIM, okay? And then you're going to add those endings. So j'aimais la mer, tu aimais le baseball, il aimait sa cravate, nous aimions chanter, vous aimiez discuter, ils aimaient leur papa. Okay, so what you notice is that the pronunciation of the je, tu, il, and il pluriel forms all sound the same, even though the endings are different. They all have that a sound on the end. J'aimais, tu aimais, il aimait, ils aimaient. Okay, and then of course we have nous aimions, vous aimiez. Those sound a little bit different. So, irregular verbs, you know there's always somebody that's not following the rules when it comes to our verbs. Être, in this case, is the only verb that has an irregular stem in the imparfait. And here is its stem right here, just this E-T. Notice the accent over the E. So here we have Tex, the armadillo from Texas French Grammar. And he says, Je voulais la voir, mais elle n'était pas là. So he's at Tammy's house. If you've paid attention to the characters on that site, as I've shown you different lessons and had you do practice activities from Texas French Grammar. Tex loves Tammy, and so I wanted to see her, but she wasn't there. Okay, so that verb être there in the imparfait. The only other things you need to know here is that occasionally you have a verb that has a slightly different spelling in the new form. So verbs that end in GER, such as the verb manger, which is one we use a lot because we like to talk about food, or at least I do. So you do remember that manger keeps the E before we add the ONS, so that it makes the soft G and says nous mangeons. Because otherwise, if we had no E there, it'd be nous mangeons, and we don't like that. We want to keep the soft G that we have in all the other forms of this verb. So in the imparfait, you need to remember to keep that E. So keep the E here. Just take off that ONS. Add your imparfait ending as it applies, you know, whichever one matches your subject. Same with verbs that end in CER, like commencer, to begin. We have a cedilla here on the C to make it a soft C when it's followed by that O. So you're going to keep that cedilla, that little accent on the bottom of your C, and then add the imparfait ending that applies to your subject. So that's the only other things that could ever be weird with this verb. Hence. All right, so how do we use it? Basically, the imparfait is used to describe or narrate habitual, repeated, or continuous actions in the past. So, you know, if you every day when you were 5 years old, you used to come home from kindergarten and eat Oreos, or every day when you were 10 years old, you read a book before you went to bed. Those are habitual, those are habits or repeated actions, things you did over and over. Continuous actions as well. So typically these are an indefinite amount of time. It doesn't matter when it started or ended. We're more just showing sort of that this was repeated, that it happened more than once. So here are some words that if you see a past tense sentence and or you want to tell me about something in the past. You if you need these types of words like always, every day, um, that's a good indication that you're going to need to put your verb into the imparfait. So, toujours means always. Tous les jours means every day. So don't get those two confused. They are a little bit similar. Tous les ans, for example, every year. We also could say, for example, if there was something that you did every summer, maybe every summer your family went to Dollywood, or every Christmas your family went to visit your grandparents. So tous les hivers, tous les Noëls, tous les étés, you could change out those um, to say every season or whatever. Tout le temps would be all the time. Souvent is often. D'habitude, usually. De temps en temps, from time to time. Quelquefois, sometimes. So these are good indicators that the imparfait is needed when narrating in the past tense. So, some other ways that we use the imparfait if we're telling a story. Anytime we are referring to location, we're talking about time. So whether it was like the day of the week, the month, so dates and times um, on a clock. Weather, age, if you're telling me when I was 5 years old, that would be in the imparfait. Physical appearance, so talking if you were describing what your best friend looked like on the day that you met, that would be verbs in the imparfait. Conditions, these can be physical and emotional, so I'll show you some examples of these in a moment, but physical conditions would be things like I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm thirsty. Emotional things, that's obvious, but just feelings. Attitudes and desires. So let's take a look at some examples of how these verbs are used. So we have, for example, if we were have a description at the beginning of a story, when we're setting the scene of our story, we use imparfait verbs. So c'était une nuit, ah, excuse me. C'était une nuit tranquille à la campagne. Il faisait froid et il neigeait. Le chat regardait par la fenêtre. So, what was going on? It was a quiet night in the country. It was cold and it was snowing. The cat was looking out the window. So, here you've got several examples. You've got a location, you've got weather phrases, you've got sort of what was the cat doing. We don't know when the cat started looking out the window or, when it stopped looking out the window. So we can sort of set the scene here using all of our verbs in the imparfait. As I said before, habitual or repeated actions. So quand j'étais petite, this would sort of be more of a like physical condition, talking about when I was little. J'allais chez mes grands-parents tous les étés. I went to my grandparents' house every summer. So again, you see this every summer as a good indicator. Those repeated actions are things that require the imparfait. And I really did have it wasn't a suitcase, but it was a little like duffel bag that had this little image on it. Physical and emotional conditions. So, for example, il avait faim. He was hungry. Elle était contente. She was happy. So, anytime you want to tell me about your feelings of any kind in the past tense, you're going to use the imparfait. Times and dates. C'était un samedi. Il était 10h10 du matin. It was a Saturday. It was 10:10 in the morning. So maybe I'm going to ask, I am going to ask you, but at a certain point, I'm going to ask you to write an essay for me about a memorable day in your life. So you might say, oh, I remember it was a Saturday, or it was a Tuesday afternoon, things like that. You're going to put those into the imperfect. When you're talking about your age in the past. So, c'était son anniversaire. Il avait 8 ans. It was his birthday. He was 8 years old. So, imagine you're looking back at a photo album and telling somebody, oh, that was my birthday. I was 10 years old then. You would use imparfait verbs for those. Physical description. So, for example, if we are, pretend this little guy here has robbed a bank and we want to describe him. We're talking about what he was wearing. Le suspect portait un pantalon noir, un peu gris, un chapeau gris et un masque noir. C'était un homme. It was a man. Il était petit. He was short. Il n'avait pas de barbe. He did not have a beard. Okay, so any types of physical descriptions of characters in a story in the past would be in the imparfait as well. Okay, and then this is another way, and we'll get into this more as we contrast the passé composé and the imparfait in the next module. But we use the imparfait to tell what was happening when something else interrupted. So, je faisais mes devoirs quand tu m'as envoyé un texto. I was doing my homework when you sent me a text. Okay, so the imparfait is basically used for what was happening. And then the passé composé can then interrupt and do, something else can happen. So that's all I've got for you for now. You're going to have a variety of activities to help you practice conjugating these verbs in the imparfait. With these verbs, a bunch of different verbs, no verbs in particular, and an opportunity to talk about when you were little, and then we will build on that in coming modules as well. Have a great day.